Hello, everyone. Tonight we are standing on the edge of a crumbling plateau under a sky that feels just slightly too wide for comfort. You can hear the dry rustle of wind-touched grass, but no barking, no howls, no paws skittering across stone. Only silence and the occasional low hoot that feels less like a sound and more like a judgment. Owls. Everywhere. On rooftops, on boulders, on your shoulder if you're not careful. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this little night caravan of ours travels. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle into a village that doesn't smell like fire or dog fur, but rather like pressed feathers, dried fish, and fermented fruit. The huts are built of vertical stone slabs laced with clay and bone, and across their eaves perch dozens of birds, white-faced, large-eyed, and eerily still. You squint into the dimming dusk, expecting movement, but even blinking feels like it might draw their attention. A child walks by, cradling a bundle swaddled in moss cloth. At first, you assume it's a sibling. Then the bundle moves, unfurls a wing, and clicks its beak softly against the child's cheek. "You're new?" says a voice beside you, matter-of-fact and old. An elder in ochre robes, what passes for a village, mere gestures for you to sit by the fireless hearth. Not many come this way. The dogs kept people out, the owls they let you in. The first thing you learn is, these owls don't warn with noise. They warn with stillness. When something's wrong, they go silent in unison, then move all together just once. A tribal alarm system triggered by feather. And they were always here, the elder insists, even when dogs were still in fashion. 1,000 years ago, maybe more, maybe less. Historians still debate it. This tribe lived like most others, digging roots, raising bark huts, training dogs to guard their sheepish herds. But here dogs didn't fare well. Something about the cliffs. They chased things too far, fell too often, or got sick from the bats. So when the night predators came, something had to change. The owls already nesting in the crags began to linger near food scraps. Children noticed first, they always do. An owl that followed them from field to field. Another that waited outside the longhouse. One even returned a lost bone pendant clutched awkwardly in its talons, like a shy apology. The turning point came during what they call the night without dogs. They say a howl rose just once, then nothing. No barking, no scrambling paws, no alert. Only an eerie flutter as the flock of owls circled and returned not to perch but to gather shoulder-to-shoulder wings outstretched toward the northern pass. The adults followed. They found the intruders trying to scale the cliffs under cover of cloud, and they stopped them. You chew on this story as the elder lets an owl land on his wrist, feathered like snow eyes, yellow as desert suns. They've always known how to listen better than dogs, he says. Dogs bark at what's there. Owls move for what's coming. The sun is gone now, and the entire village shifts. Torches numb. They light fungus lamps, bioluminescent pouches soaked in algae and marrow oil. The glow is soft, flickering green, casting deep shadows. One owl swoops low over your head. Another clicks softly from a perch above the communal storehouse. And one enormous barn owl, almost ghostly, flies slow circles above the central gathering stone, where a single rib bone sticks out of the earth like a monument. First one says the elder, named her Mhu. She chose us. We buried her upright so she could keep watch. He smiles gently. She's still on duty. There's a weight to this place. Not heavy like grief, but old like wool soaked in salt water and time. You notice there are no kennels, no scratching posts. Only high perches, hooded roosts, and feeding rings stacked with shredded rodent meat and bits of dried kelp. One little girl tries to feed an owl a piece of cooked yam. It takes the offering, looks disappointed, and drops it dramatically to the ground. You laugh. The owl doesn't. Apparently, they don't like root vegetables. Later, you're offered a bed woven from dried reeds and soft down. It smells like feathers and dust, but it's warm. Above your sleeping mat, an owl perches inside a half-gourd, watching you, unblinking, silent. You try to sleep, you really do. But somewhere deep in the village, you hear the subtle shift of air. A swoop, then stillness. They say the owls don't speak, but in the hush that follows, you're not so sure. By the second evening, your shoes are dusted with limestone grit and something vaguely phosphorescent. The cliffs that encircle the village aren't just scenic, they act like parabolic dishes catching sound in odd ways. You clap once and hear it twice. Say hello, and it sounds like a small chorus replies from behind you. That's when you notice the owls are always listening. Not watching, listening. You're invited to observe the night watch. No torches, no shouting, and certainly no patrol dogs. Just a quiet procession of owl handlers, each wrapped in cloaks dyed the same pale ash as the feathers of their assigned bird. Some owls ride in hoods. Others float above their handlers in silent formation, never flapping, just coasting on subtle drafts that seem to come from nowhere. The elder explains their duties with the quiet tone of someone describing a sacred kitchen recipe. We don't tell the owls where to go, he says. We show them what not to miss. Each handler moves with deliberate slowness, pausing to crouch at pre-marked spots. Stone notches, tree scars, oddly shaped shadows cast by the moon. And the owls, they do not hoot. Instead, they click. A rhythmic clack of beak to beak echoing down the paths like a code. Historians still debate whether this clicking was taught by humans or if the birds invented it themselves. But everyone agrees it serves a purpose, a signal system. Click once, all's well. Click twice, unusual scent. Click 3 times, prepare. You try it. A soft click, click, click with your tongue. An owl near the perimeter swivels its head 180 degrees toward you, blinks, and resumes its vigil. That's not ominous at all. The patrol ends at the watch ring, a circle of flat stones arranged like a sundial. In the center lies a bowl filled with old owl feathers, each one marked with streaks of ochre and fish ash. You're told that when an owl dies, its last feather is left here as a vow of continued service. One young boy, no older than 8, steps forward to place a feather. His owl, tiny with orange eyes like polished sap perches nearby, had bowed. The ceremony is short, no tears, just respect. Later, you sip a drink made from boiled bark and fermented berries that taste like sadness and mint. The villagers speak softly, if at all. They don't need noise to feel close. Their bond with the owls has made speech optional in most tasks. An odd fact: when strangers visit this village, they often report vivid dreams featuring flying. Not soaring heroically, but hovering awkwardly, as if dragged upward by invisible talons. You dream that way too, and when you wake, your arms feel oddly cold and outstretched, though you've barely moved. That night during your watch rotation, you're assigned to follow a handler named Sane, whose owl is the color of dried driftwood. Sane doesn't speak. Instead, she gestures with 3 fingers, then snaps them downward. The owl responds by diving into the underbrush and returning with a twitching rat, which it proceeds to kill without ceremony and drop in Sane's leather pouch. That's her 5th, the elder whispers. She's feeding the cave brood. There are underground nests. Oh yes, he says. Some owls don't patrol, they breed. Lay their eggs in moss-lined cracks deep in the limestone. Why not dogs, you finally ask? Why not bring them back? The elder scratches his chin. Dogs give affection, loyalty, companionship. Owls give warning. Owls don't love us. They accept us. It's a strange statement, and it lingers like bitter root tea. Because love and loyalty are comforting, yes, but so is survival. You watch as Sane's owl flutters to a high perch and begins a slow, rhythmic head bob. Left, right, forward. It's watching something. You peer into the dark. A large boar, tusks crooked like old knives, is trotting along the edge of the far path. The owl clicks twice. No one moves. No spear is thrown. They wait. The boar pauses, sniffing. It looks up, sees the row of owls lined along the ridge, and turns around. Not because it was threatened, but because it was seen. That's the power here, not violence, visibility. You chuckle under your breath. It's like a village of librarians with wings. Seeing hears you, raises an eyebrow. Compliment you, whisper. She does not laugh, but her owl blinks very slowly. You choose to take that as approval. Toward dawn, the air shifts. A cold current moves through the trees carrying the scent of moss, burnt sap, and distant rain. The owls begin to stir just slightly. No flight, just feathers, fluffed bodies lifted half an inch taller. A storm is coming, not loud, not fast, but coming. By the time the first light cracks the sky, the entire village has retreated to higher ground. Just as the first low thunder rolls in, not a single word was shouted. No orders, just a silent response to the birds. And maybe that's why they trust owls more than dogs. Because dogs bark when it's already too late. By your third day in the village, you've started to notice the little things, the way feathers drift in corners like cobwebs, the way every roof overhang is curved slightly outward, designed not to shed rain, but to catch owl droppings for use in fertilizer and dye. Someone once told you that everything here had a purpose. They weren't exaggerating. You're invited to help clear the old ceremonial grounds after last night's wind. What they don't tell you is that the clearing is also a graveyard. Not for people, for owls. The stone field lies a short walk up a ravine nestled between twisted birch trees and a rock wall decorated with faded spirals and bird-like pictographs. You nearly step on one before realizing it's a burial marker, two crossed feathers tied with sinew and placed inside a clay ring. As you work your way down the path, brushing aside leaf litter and ash, more markers appear. Dozens, then hundreds. Some small, clearly for fledglings. Others enormous, belonging to birds you swear must have had wingspans wider than your bed. You pause near a central mound covered in white stones. A child whispers that it's called the Cradle of Air. That's where they bury the oldest owls, the ones who never took a mate, who trained generations of handlers who never failed to return. You ask if dogs were ever buried here. The child looks confused. Dogs? No, they leave. What do you mean? They don't die in the village, she says very simply. They go away first. It's not the most scientific answer, but it lands like a stone in your stomach. Later, one of the elders clarifies. Before the owl era, dogs were honored, buried near humans. But as the tribe shifted to owl bonding, the dogs became separate. Less family, more tool. And when their usefulness waned, they seemed to sense it. They would disappear into the hills or vanish during hunts, never returning. Some say they were chased off. Others believe the dogs left by instinct, sensing their replacement. Historians still debate whether this mass canine departure was natural or engineered. Either way, it marked a cultural divide. One dig site near the Cradle of Air brings it into focus. You help unearth a wide, shallow pit lined with flat stones. Inside are the remains of 12 owls perfectly arranged in a circle, heads pointed outward. Defensive posture, someone says. Ritual protection, someone else suggests. There are also 6 bronze medallions, one on each alternating bird, decorated with etched spirals and what appear to be eyes. Eyes that never blink. What's more startling is that this grave appears much older than the village itself. A preliminary dating guess puts it at nearly 2,000 years old. The implication owls were buried here long before the known transition from dogs. Your head swims with the possibilities. What if this wasn't a practical decision? What if it was spiritual, superstitious? Or worse, based on something they saw in the dark one night that dogs couldn't explain. That evening, you overhear a fireside tale. One of the handlers, gray-haired, wide-eyed, and definitely enjoying the attention, tells of a dream her grandfather had. In it, the dogs barked at the moon again and again, but the moon wouldn't answer. The owl, silent, stared at the ground instead. The next day there was an earthquake. A bad one. The dogs had barked at the wrong thing. It's just a story. Probably. But you make a mental note to pay closer attention to what the owls don't look at. Another odd fact. In the early days of the owl tradition, villagers used to dye their eyebrows to mimic the sharp upward curve of owl facial discs. The trend died out centuries ago, but you see a few older folks still sporting the pale crescent tattoos. A show of respect, perhaps, or alignment. One man, a quiet fellow named Torhin, offers you a cracked piece of old pottery while you're brushing off the edge of a broken marker. The shard shows a curious image, a dog leashed but staring up at an owl perched above a gate. Between them, a human with outstretched arms, unsure whether to raise or lower them. A choice, Torrin says. They chose the sky. You pocket the shard. It's warm from the sun and oddly heavy. Back in the village, a small celebration begins. Nothing loud, just fermented honey, drink soft drums made from deer gut and owl talon shells, and a dance that mimics flight. You try joining. You look ridiculous. No one says anything, but several owls seem deeply unimpressed. And in that moment, under twilight, half-drunk feathers floating past your eyes, you start to get it. The owls didn't just replace the dogs, they reshaped the people. Because once you learn to live with silence, noise starts to feel like a mistake. By now, you've stopped reacting every time an owl glides past your face, even when it's close enough to ruffle your hair. Their flight is so quiet it barely counts as sound, more like an afterthought on the air. But tonight the elder wants you to meet a particular kind of owl, one that doesn't soar so much as listen. They call it the side ear. You think it's a joke? It is not. The side ears are bred for one trait, asymmetry. One ear higher than the other. One bigger than a thumbprint, the other just a slit. It looks like a mistake, but it works. These owls can pinpoint sound not just left to right, but top to bottom, front to back, like living sonar towers. They keep them in the echo cavern. Getting there involves descending into a narrow crack in the cliffside that smells like fungus and guano stew. The path is slick, torchless. Your only light is the faint green glow from moss lichen smeared against the walls. The elder walks ahead without pause. He's done this before. Many, many times. Inside the cavern, your ears adjust before your eyes do. Sounds bounce strangely. A whisper 10 feet away lands in your left ear like it came from inside your chest. Your own breath feels like it echoes out of your kneecaps. You want to say something funny, but it dies in your throat. Because perched along the jagged ridges of the cavern are a dozen side ears, and they are all facing you, unblinking, motionless, ears tilted in a way that feels aware. The elder claps twice, once loud, once soft. A single owl responds by shifting its posture and tilting its head sharply toward a distant tunnel opening. Then it clicks once and goes still again. They hear things we can't, the elder says almost reverently. Water moving underground. Roots drying out. The brush of fur 2 ridges away. The difference between human feet and clawed ones. You're skeptical until you try the test. You're blindfolded and told to speak at 5 different locations. You do. A child watches the side ear owl and marks where its head turns each time. When you remove the blindfold, every mark is within half a foot of your actual position. That's not superstition. That's tracking tech wrapped in feathers. Historians argue about when exactly this breed was developed. Some believe it's a natural mutation. Others insist it's a result of careful selection over generations, like how modern dogs became lap-sized from wolves. But either way, it's clear these owls aren't just pets. They're tools, instruments that hear lies. The elder shows you a carved wooden mask once worn by judges in disputes. It has no eyes, just elongated ear slits. Justice must listen, he says, handing it to you, not look. And suddenly, the dogs make even less sense. Dogs react to what they see, what they smell. Owls listen, and in this tribe, listening matters more. You learn that side ears are never trained to hunt, only to listen. Their ears are too fragile, their skulls too delicate. One wrong gust of wind, and they can hemorrhage. So they are sheltered, revered, and feared. The locals believe a side ear can hear lies in your breath rate, guilt in your posture, shame in your bones. They use them during rites of passage. You watch a teenager step into the echo cavern, speak a truth, then a lie. The owl doesn't move for the truth. But when the lie is told, even whispered, it clicks once and ruffles its feathers. The teen is mortified. The owl clicks again, and the whole chamber laughs. Not mockery, relief. Another lesson learned. Another strange detail: side ears molt less often. Their feathers are said to carry a tone when played across a harp string, something no other feather does. A visiting musician once called it the ghost note. You try it rubbing a spare feather against a dried reed. It hums, barely, but it hums. You sleep that night near the cavern in a lean-to of owl feathers and old fish nets. You dream in echoes. Someone calls your name in reverse. You wake up cold, unsure if you were even asleep. And one side ear is perched nearby, eyes closed, but head still cocked as if eavesdropping on your dreams. You don't speak, it clicks once anyway. And somehow you know it understood. You wake the next morning with a strange weight on your chest, not fear, not fatigue, just something like a question that hasn't found its words yet. You roll over to brush off a feather and realize it's not a feather at all. It's a thin strip of dog hide, dried and curled, like a bark ribbon, left on purpose. Someone wants you to ask. Later, by the smoke ring, where the elders scrape resin from the trees, one of them motions you to sit and chew thistle root. It tastes like dust and dental regret. He doesn't speak right away. No one rushes in this place unless something's already on fire. Finally, he nods toward the strip you're holding. That's from the last dog, he says. You pause mid-chew. The last dog. His eyes are distant. Well, the last dog here. His name was Rock. Big, gray, wore a collar carved from fish spine and copper flakes, said to understand 30 hand signals and 60 smells. Loved children, hated thunder, could chase a deer across stone without splitting a toe. He vanished, the elder says. You ask when. About the same time the owls began to bond, he says. Some say he left in jealousy. Some say he was taken. Now you're leaning forward. The elder continues, voice low. There was a famine, harsh one. Winter came early. The hunters failed. The dogs ate scraps, then bark, then each other. You flinch, but not Rock. He stayed. Until one night, the owl children woke crying. No bark, just silence, and Rock was gone. His collar left at the village edge, nestled in owl feathers. Historians still debate what exactly happened that year. Some records suggest disease. Others suggest conflict, dog against owl, handler against handler. One theory proposes that a vote was held. Whether to keep feeding the dogs or risk bonding with the silent ones instead. No one alive remembers the vote, but everyone remembers what came next. Silence. You visit the stone ring where Rock's collar was found. It's small, sunken. The grass here grows shorter, as if something beneath the soil keeps it nervous. The only marking is a single stone scored deeply with 5 claw marks. Not etched, scored. And near it, perched neatly on a high branch, an owl watches. Unmoving, ancient. You don't know how you know. But it's the same owl, the one from the story. The one who watched Rock leave, or chased him away. You return shaken, but curious. Because here's the thing. Dogs aren't forgotten. They're just not spoken of unless asked. It's like an ex-lover who still sends birthday gifts, always there, never welcome. That night, a storm rolls in. Not violent, just wet. The kind that turns the ground to soup and the sky to ash. You huddle under the communal canopy where stories flow easier and drinks are stronger. A young woman tells you something that makes your spine bristle. They say some owls used to bark. You blink. Excuse me? She nods. Not now, not anymore, but in the early days. Mimicked the dogs, just a little. Low, like a cough, deep in their throats. No one else confirms it. No one denies it. Later, when you're brushing damp ash from your cloak, you hear something outside. A sharp guttural noise. Not a hoot, not a click. A bark, just once, cut short. You freeze. Nothing follows, just wind. And then an owl glides silently overhead, head tilted, wings out, eyes reflecting firelight. You don't sleep well. You keep thinking of rock, the famine, the silence, and the collar left not buried, not burned, but placed like an offering. What if he didn't leave? What if they let him go? Morning fog wraps the village like gauze. You rise early not because you're rested, but because the dream didn't let you finish it. Something about a dog standing at the edge of a cliff watching a flock of owls disappear into a thundercloud. You think it said your name, but in a language with no vowels. The elder finds you pacing the main path and motions silently to follow. You do. Of course you do. That's the rule here. If someone older beckons, you follow, especially if they're holding a hooded basket and walking toward the rookery. It's time to meet the babies. The rookery is housed in what used to be a longhouse, a communal lodge built into a rock overhang lined with insulation made from mammoth wool and dried kelp sheets. Now it's quiet, still warm, still busy, but quieter. Inside, low cages made of knotted vine and stone slats hold tiny bundles of feathers, round eyes, and very judgmental expressions. Baby owls. Dozens of them. Some sleep, some wobble awkwardly toward food dishes. One tries to stare you into submission. You blink first. They start bonding early. The elder explains, setting his basket down. Inside, two hatchlings chirp and puff out their down. Not imprinting, not quite. Bonding takes longer, but it lasts. Each chick is raised with a single handler in training. This is not optional. The pairing is chosen within hours of hatching, not by humans, by the owls. A silent ritual plays out each season. The children sit in a ring. The owlets are released in the center. Whichever child an owlet waddles toward becomes its bondmate. If none approach, they are assigned to the watchers, non-patrolling, non-communicating owls who serve only as sentinels. You ask what happens to children who aren't chosen. The elder avoids your eyes. They become map makers or fishers. You understand. Not everyone's meant to fly. The bonding ritual isn't just emotional, it's practical. Each child wears a scent locket, a hollow pebble filled with crushed herbs, bone dust, and sometimes a pinch of their own hair. The locket is warmed daily and rubbed against the owl's perch. Over time, the owl learns the scent better than sight, because sound can trick you. The elder says, light can fool you. But scent, that's harder to lie about. Some children even sleep with their owls in thick fur pouches. Others wear feathered cloaks stitched with down from molted wings. You see one boy whose arm is calloused where the owl perches even during sleep. The bond is real, deep, and more than a little unsettling. You meet a girl named Lynn, barely 10, who's already guiding her owl using only finger positions. She raises 3 fingers, her owl flutters to the left. 2 fingers, it loops back and hovers. 1 finger horizontal, the owl lands without sound. You're floored. How long did it take to teach that? She shrugs. He taught me. It's not a boast, just a fact. But it's not all cozy fluff and teamwork. The downside of early bonding grief. If a handler dies, the owl almost never bonds again. If the owl dies, well, some handlers don't either. One wall of the rookery bears a faded mural, owls flying with trailing ribbons, each with a single human figure carved in silhouette clinging to a talon. They call them the lost ones. Not killed, just gone. One odd custom you're shown involves dream sharing. During nesting season, handlers are encouraged to sleep in the rookery and record their dreams. Not for content, but for timing. If enough people dream of wind or fire on the same night, it's taken as a sign that the owls are sensing change even before it arrives. Historians remain skeptical. Dream data isn't easy to verify. But several well-documented migrations and weather events did coincide with clustered dream weeks. Make of that what you will. That afternoon, you help prepare the chick's first flying challenge. It's less glamorous than it sounds as soft drop-off from a stone ramp into a pile of fermented moss. Some fail, some cry. One simply refuses, turns around, and tries to eat the ramp. They all get there, says one wrinkled caretaker adjusting her leg brace. Some just walk to the sky. As you leave, a young owl follows you uninvited. Perches on a beam above your path. Watches you eat. Watches you blink. Watches you think about things you weren't planning to think about. You try to shoo it. It doesn't move. The elder grins. Careful. You might be getting chosen. You laugh, but not entirely, because the owl is still there when you wake up from your nap 3 hours later, still watching. You wake to the sound of wind chimes. Except they're not wind chimes. They're bones. Small ones clinking together inside reed loops hung along the rooftops. Owl bones. A soft reminder that even the most graceful things leave something behind when they're done. Today is fast Saturday, the training begins. Not for you. You're too clumsy, too obvious, too noisy. But the village youth are entering their first week of silent signal training, and you're invited to observe as long as you don't speak, sneeze, or accidentally insult an owl by blinking too slow. The training field lies just past the cliffs in a narrow basin shaped like a broken bowl. Here, stone towers and wooden frames mimic threats, crouched silhouettes, rustling fabric traps, old boar skulls mounted on poles. Think of it as military school for feathered shadows. Each handler steps forward with their owl perched on wrist or shoulder. No leashes, no tethers, just trust. A line of elders watches from above holding thin branches with color bands. These function as the test cues. Each band signals a challenge: red for threat, blue for chase, green for shadow scouting, black for disappear. First up, silent gesture recall. A handler raises their pinky and twitches it. The owl darts behind a structure and reappears 3 meters to the left without a sound. Next scent trail. The handler places a small leather pouch soaked in rabbit blood beneath a fake thicket. The owl locates it in 4 seconds. Then mock raid. The elders raise 2 black sticks. Instantly, the training field shifts. Smoke flares ignite from hidden trenches, and villagers, dressed in scavenged skins, storm the arena, shouting, stomping, banging rocks. It's chaos unless you're watching the owls. They scatter upward, split into assigned flight paths, and circle high above the invaders. Each one clicks a different rhythm. 1, pause. 1, 1. 1, 2, 1. A code incomprehensible to you, but the handlers respond by relocating, flanking, and moving into signal formations like they've been rehearsing this for a lifetime. And most of them have. You ask one of the observers later if the training ever goes wrong. Once she says, "We had an owl that clicked backward." Backward. She nods. Some say it was cursed. Others say it had seen something it wasn't supposed to survive. What happened? We let it leave. You mean? No, it left. One day, it flew toward the sea. Never came back. Its handler cried for 3 weeks and never bonded again. You file that away under unsettling trivia, somewhere between owls barked once and feathers used in courtroom truth rituals. The second part of training involves terrain mimicry. Owls are taught to follow humans into unfamiliar areas and identify new danger types. In one demo, a handler leads their owl through a mock cavern filled with reflective stones. The owl makes no noise, but when the handler steps near a marked pit, it flares its wings and leans forward, not a warning exactly. More like a question. Are you sure you want to do that? You ask if dogs ever did similar drills. An elder scoffs. Dogs bark at the hole. Owls map it. See the difference? You do, sort of. Dogs are companions. Owls are partners. Odd fact. Ancient handlers used to paint their tongues blue with crushed orchid root, believing it would help them speak skyward more clearly to their birds. No one does it now, but a few teens still try it on bonding day. Mostly to look mysterious. It tastes awful, they say. By late afternoon, the training winds down. Most of the owls return to their perches. One refuses. A small gray bird with rust-colored wingtips continues circling the stone pillars long after the test ends. Its handler tries to call it down with finger flicks, then scent pouch, then soft whistle. Nothing. That one's caught something, someone mutters. You look up and realize the owl isn't circling randomly. It's tracking movement. Something small, fast weaving just beneath the tree line at the basin's far edge. The handler kneels, waits. The owl clicks once, dives. It emerges with a squirming snake clamped in its talons. Not part of the test, not part of anything. Lesson, the elder says, we don't tell them what to see. We just make sure they're watching. You feel something shift in your ribs. A strange mix of awe and caution. Because if these birds can find danger even during a game, maybe they've never really been playing. The next evening, the clouds change color. Not just gray, not quite black, but a kind of bruised lavender that drags across the sky like an old wet blanket. One of the side ears clicks 3 times and puffs up its feathers. The children stop playing. The elders move inside. No one says a word. You've seen storms before. You've seen villagers prepare for them. But this is different. This is choreography. The owl perches are cleared, the wind chimes removed, even the moss lanterns are dimmed and set upside down. Not extinguished, just silenced. Even the light needs to stay quiet. It starts with pressure, the kind that pushes on your chest from the inside. The trees bend but don't rustle. The air tastes like iron and pollen and wet stone. And then, without ceremony, the rain begins. But the owls are already in the sky, not escaping, not hiding, flying into the storm. They call this the wing measure, a sacred maneuver where the bonded pairs test the shape and mood of the weather by flying into its breath. You think it sounds poetic until you see it. Then it just looks like madness. They don't fly high just above the ridgeline, low enough to vanish in the mist. The idea isn't to confront the storm. It's to listen to it, to measure how it moves, to hear the hidden things it carries. You stand under the communal awning as Lynn, the girl with the Twitch command owl, prepares to launch her bird. She doesn't wear a cloak, just a loop of woven kelp around her neck, from which a tiny bell dangles. You ask what it's for. If it rings, she says it means I've forgotten how to breathe. That doesn't make you feel better. The elder explains that the owls can detect the storm's center, not its eye, but its heart, where the air folds in on itself. If the owls return quickly and dive into their roosts, it's a warning. If they circle once and land, it's safe. But if they don't return at all, the last time that happened, 6 people vanished. The river rose without warning. A mudslide buried the northern trail. The owls had flown away upward and outward, not fleeing, escaping. You ask how often that happens. Not often, the elder says, but enough times that we keep records. This time they return, one by one, silent as ghosts, soaked but calm. They shake the water from their feathers and click once. Every single one, except one. A younger owl, pale brown with a scar near its beak, doesn't land. It circles higher, once, twice, then stops in midair, wings, stiff body tilting forward as if pulled. It dives not toward the village, but toward the far ridge. Lynn gasps. The elders freeze. The owl's cry cuts through the rain. Not a hoot, not a click, but something else. A screech. Loud. Urgent. Wrong. Then the others follow. 10, then 20 owls launch again, spiraling after the lone diver. The elders react instantly. Handlers are called. Children moved indoors. You're handed a cloak, a lantern, and told, you're not a guest now, you're a witness. You follow them toward the ridge, and there, tangled in the storm-struck brush, is a shape. Not a beast, not a person. A fallen wind catcher, a wooden structure used to measure seasonal gusts, collapsed in the wind. Beneath it, pinned and writhing, a wolf. Not quite a dog, but close. It's injured. Young, scared. Its leg trapped under the beam, eyes wide with pain and panic. The owl had seen it, chosen not to ignore it. You ask what they'll do. One handler steps forward with a pouch. You expect a weapon. It's not. It's food. The wolf is fed. The beam lifted. Its leg examined. And then, the moment that chills your spine, one of the side ears lands beside it. Not on it, beside it. Tilts its head. Clicks. The wolf doesn't snarl, doesn't run. Just watches. And in that stillness, in that rain under the bruised lavender sky, you realize something you hadn't dared consider until now. The owls don't hate dogs. They just waited until silence was the only thing that listened. You return soaked, breathless, and changed. The village feels different now, not just quiet, but expectant. Like it's waiting for a question you haven't dared to ask, or an answer it already knows you won't like. That night, you're invited to the handler's hall, a low circular chamber built partly underground. Inside, the ceiling glows faintly from layers of shell-lacquered mushroom skin, and the air smells like warm moss and dried meat. It's not a place for ceremony. It's for confession. You sit beside Zone, the quiet handler, whose owl once delivered 5 rats in a single hour. She unrolls a bundle of cloth to reveal 6 tiny bones. Owl bones, light as ash. These are his, she says. He got sick. From what? Pellet dust, she mutters. Or maybe the mold. The ones that hunt too long sometimes choke on what they can't spit out. You hadn't considered that. The job isn't all mystic glamour and feathered cloaks. It's hard, intimate physical work. And the bond cuts both ways. Handlers suffer injuries you never thought to ask about: dislocated fingers from sudden perches, punctures from talons, misjudging landing, respiratory infections from inhaling regurgitated fur and bone dust. They don't complain. It's part of the contract. You care for a creature that doesn't speak and cannot explain what it sees. One elder has permanent hearing loss in his left ear, not from noise, but from years of leaning too close to his side ear's pressure cries. Their warning clicks hit like sonar bursts. You ask why he didn't rotate ears. He shrugs. My good ear was all ready for the lies. But there's something else, something unspoken. You find it tucked in a stone alcove behind the hall, a ledger. Not written in ink, but carved into clay tablets. Names, dates, symbols, a feather, a circle, a tiny X. You count 17 entries marked with the X, all handlers. What does the X mean, you ask? Scene hesitates. They lost their owls, but not in flight, not in battle. You look closer. Most X's appear in the same 3-year span. A sickness, maybe. She nods. We think it was something in the caves, or the pelts. They all died in the same week, quietly. No warning. And the handlers didn't scream, didn't cry, just stopped coming to meals. One walked into the woods. One walked into the river. One just sat. You exhale through your teeth. The bond was that strong. Scene doesn't answer, but she does show you the scar on her forearm. A perfect crescent, not from violence, just where her owl once landed every night. That skin no longer grows hair. Another odd fact: some handlers claim they can feel their owl even after death, like a phantom limb. They wake with their arm raised, waiting for weight that never returns. One old woman insists she still hears clicking in her left ear every time she lies to herself. Historians argue over whether this bond is neurological or spiritual. Some say the village used herbal oils that rewired brain chemistry. Others believe it's simply long-term routine misinterpreted as connection, but you're starting to think it's something older. Something that predates even explanation. You return to your shelter late, heavy with questions. On the roof beam, the same owl watches you. Still unclaimed. Still watching. You climb up slowly. It doesn't move. You don't want me, you murmur. It tilts its head. Too loud, too confused. No response. You close your eyes, then just once it clicks, and you know without knowing how that it has heard everything. It's early morning when you hear the scratching, not the sharp, frantic kind. This is rhythmic, purposeful. You follow the sound out past the rookery through a low tunnel of earth and roots into the cold sunlight of the western ridge. There, nestled under a flat stone slab, is something strange. A package, tied in dried vine and wrapped in oiled hide. Not buried, not hidden, just placed like it knew someone would come. Inside, a weather-worn talon guard, a ring made of woven bark fiber, and 6 bronze tokens, each marked with the spiraled eye symbol you've now seen a dozen times. These, you're told, are flight marks tokens once affixed to owl talons during long-distance missions. You hold one up. It's light thin and smells faintly of char. These are messages Cian says beside you, quiet as the moss. Not written, delivered. Before the time of shared language, before ink and slate, this tribe used owls to relay presence. Not words, presence. A token sent meant I live, I remember, I wait, or sometimes we survive. The recipient didn't read it, they held it, smelled it, rubbed it against their tongue or cheek. If the scent felt wrong, they knew the worst. You're led to a narrow chamber carved into the cliff wall. The flight hall. Here dozens of bronze tokens hang from the ceiling on strings of dried sinew. They spin faintly in the draft like ancient wind chimes. Each represents a journey. Each was brought back. You ask how the owls knew where to go. There's no map, no guidance, no coordinates, just instinct and scent. The handlers sent them with a breath, one elder explains. Exhaled into the pouch. The owl remembered it. You think that's nonsense until you see the ritual. A young girl prepares a message. She doesn't write it. She breathes it, 3 full exhales into a pouch laced with mint and bone soot. The owl taps its beak on her wrist once, then flies. Gone, into the clouds, just like that. You follow the elders to the archive's long clay scrolls pressed with thumbprint codes and feather sigils. Here, you learn that these tokens weren't just sent to nearby clans. Some went over mountains, across swamps, over frozen lakes, and returned. Not all, but enough. And one they say came back twice. It's a strange tale. A token sent to a dying outpost beyond the Black River. No word for years. Then without warning, the owl returned. With the same token, and a new smell, burnt juniper iron wet wool. No note, no blood, just the scent. The tribe smelled it, argued for days, and concluded the outpost burned. But someone survived. They sent no rescue, just another owl. You wonder aloud, what if the owls carried more than messages? What if they carried meaning? A young archivist, barely 15, says they do, but it's not for us. Odd fact, the flight marks are never made from metal smelted here. Always traded. Always strange bronze, sometimes even gold. The theory, it wasn't about value, it was about difference. A token had to feel foreign to prove it came from far. You ask if any ever carried something darker. The elder stiffens. There is one tale. A token returned, wrapped in feathers not from the owl, but from another. Charred. Bound with string. It smelled of myrrh and blood. No one touched it. They hung it high where wind could carry whatever message it held far away. It's still there. You see it. A black feather tied with copper wire spinning above the rest. Cian whispers. Some say it was a curse, others a warning. You decide not to ask what they did next. Because even in a village of silence, there are things best left unspoken. You've grown used to the owls. Their silence, their watching, their strange logic. So it shocks you when a child grabs your hand and says, "Come see the dogs." You're halfway through peeling a boiled root. What dogs? The old ones, she says, tugging in the wall. Now, that's a phrase that gets your attention. She leads you to the south cliff just beyond the mushroom orchard. There, the rock face is split by a narrow fissure barely wide enough for a child, which is why she goes first. You follow, scraping your shoulders against damp stone and swallowing your claustrophobia like bitter tea. Inside, a chamber opens up. Stale air, moss, old soot marks on the ceiling. It's not abandoned, it's protected. And on the walls, etched in deep, ancient grooves are dogs. Not stylized, not abstract, realistic. Dozens of them, curled beside humans, chasing deer, barking at thunder. One is shown licking a baby's face. Another carries a rabbit in its jaws like a gift. These aren't war beasts, they're family. The child points excitedly. That one has 5 tails, that one's dancing, that one's biting a storm. You take a breath and lean closer. The carvings are old, much older than the village, much older than the owl bones. These dogs were first. You ask the child who made the drawings. The earth, she says, smiling. But people helped. Sure, why not? What puzzles you at the timeline? The art here, clear, expressive, alive, starts with dogs and slowly transitions. You spot a carving of a dog and owl standing side by side. Then a human reaching toward the owl. Then just owls. Then nothing. Not erased. Just stopped. A historian might call this transitional iconography. You call it quiet heartbreak. You spot one more scene before leaving. Carved near the floor, a dog curled around a group of children. Its eyes are open. A single owl perches nearby, not facing the dog but the darkness behind it. A warning, maybe? Back outside, the elder greets you with folded arms. You found the truth. You nod. Dogs were here first. He sighs, yes. And they stayed until they couldn't. He leads you to a stone table near the fire pit, places a rolled cloth on the surface, opens it. Inside, an ancient collar. Not like the decorative ones you've seen. This one's reinforced with bone hide and copper discs, etched with spiral symbols. At its center, a broken clasp stained green with age. This, he says, was meant to protect the owl it held. You blink. You mean a dog protected an owl? The elder nods. For a time, they worked together. Dog patrolled, owls watched. The bond was real, but unbalanced. How? Owls changed the people. Made them quieter, slower, more careful. Dogs didn't understand. They needed sound, movement. Barking was honesty, but honesty got too loud. You sit back stunned. So the dogs left. Some, he says, others were let go. Historians still argue about this moment. Some say it was practical, a shift toward better survival tactics. Others believe it was spiritual, a turning from kinship to clarity, a decision to choose silence over affection. Odd fact, in the oldest burial records, one tomb lists a name scratched out and replaced with a feather sigil. Later notes suggest this was a human who requested to be buried with their dog. The request was denied. You ask why. The elder looks away. Because even love has limits. That night you return to the owl, the same one, still watching. Still quiet. You whisper, "Did you know the dogs?" It blinks. You whisper again. "Do you miss them?" No answer. But this time it doesn't fly away. And you think that might be enough. The owl follows you now, not perched, not leashed, not owned but near. Always just far enough to deny intent, close enough to imply attention. It waits in trees when you gather herbs, sits on fence posts during meals. Once you looked up from washing your face and saw its reflection in the water, not its body, just its reflection. The villagers start to notice. One young boy whispers, "You've been feather-marked." You ask what that means. He shrugs. It means you might stay. You're not sure how to feel about that. Today, the village welcomes a guest, a historian from a mountain tribe wrapped in bark weave and bearing scrolls that smell like wet goats. He's one of the few allowed to trade stories with the owl people. You sit in on the exchange, perched on a mossy bench between an elder and someone sharpening fish bones for buttons. The historian clears his throat. "We've been wondering why your people chose owls instead of dogs. The old stories don't explain it." A fair question. The elder doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he calls for Lynn, the young girl with the finger-trained owl. She steps forward, silent, confident, and raises one hand. Her owl lands. Then she places a single red berry on the ground and steps back. A moment later, a young dog, a visitor likely brought by the historian, ambles into the circle. Sniffs, approaches the berry, opens its mouth. The owl drops silently from above and slaps the dog's nose with a wingtip. Not a strike, a statement. The dog yelps, startled, and runs. Everyone chuckles. The elder finally speaks. Dogs act, owls observe. We learn to value the pause. But the historian presses. Still, why reject dogs completely? The elder sighs. We didn't reject them. They rejected us. You ask what he means. He looks to the trees. They wanted joy. We wanted quiet. It's not a condemnation. It's a divergence. Historians still debate whether the transition was voluntary. Some say a drought changed the prey landscape, making silent hunting more viable. Others suggest spiritual revelations, visions involving winged ancestors or dreams of feathers falling like snow. Some claim a highland shaman warned of a future where barking would bring ruin. No one agrees. The elder shows you a feather pouch used in pre-owl rituals. Inside are stones etched with both paw and talon marks. Proof perhaps of a time when both were sacred. We tried to keep them both, he says, but balance is delicate. Odd fact, an early owl handler codes the word for listen and the word for wait were the same symbol, two feathers crossed beneath a closed eye. You walk the village paths that evening as the sun sinks. In one yard, a child throws stones at a hoop. In another, a teenager teaches an owl to loop through a moving curtain. And beside a low fire, two elders argue softly about whether owls can count. You sit and think. Maybe the choice wasn't about silence, or loyalty, or even safety. Maybe it was about the shape of community of life. Dogs asked to be with you. Owls asked you to be with them. It's a subtle difference, but everything hinges on it. You ask the elder if the dogs returned, would they be welcomed? He doesn't smile, doesn't frown, just says, that depends. On what? Whether they could stand not being heard. You lie in your shelter that night listening. The owl lands outside, doesn't come in, just waits. And somehow in the hush you feel spoken to. They say no one ever hears the owls during a war. You wake to a strange hum in the air like silence wrapped in static. Something is off, not wrong, just held. A tension like a pause before a drumbeat. Then you notice none of the owls are perched. Not one. Every rooftop is bare. The rookery is empty. The training posts, the boundary stones, the favored tree hollows, all vacant. You step outside and find the village frozen. Not in panic, but in preparation. Quiet, tight-eyed, efficient. Baskets being packed. Infants wrapped. Doors secured not with locks, but with feathers woven into tight spirals. No one speaks. You find Sane near the southern watch ring. She's lacing her boots with strips of reed soaked in ash. What's happening? She points toward the far cliffs. Smoke. Not drifting, lazily marching. Thick, low, smeared across the horizon like someone dragged a charcoal stick across the sky. The kind of smoke that follows people, not trees. Raiders. They come rarely now, but they still come, bands of scavengers who never forgot the old world of flame and barking dogs. They fear owls, but fear is a poor deterrent when desperation grows hungry. The owls are already in the air. Scene explains it like weather. They don't fight. They forecast. Their flight tells us how close, how many, how fast. You squint. The sky is a mess of wings. But there's a pattern, a slow spiral forming over the western trail. The widest circle you've ever seen. Then it tightens. Clicks echo across the ridge. 3, 2, 1. They're coming through the canyon, Sane says grimly. Fools. You're confused. Why is that foolish? She just grins. Because the canyon is theirs. The village doesn't arm itself in the traditional sense. There are no spears, no blades, just signals, markers, and feathers. You join a group led by Lynn and her owl, now fully grown, proud, and eerily quiet even in flight. You climb up through a trail you didn't know existed to a flat outcrop overlooking the canyon mouth. From here you see them 12 raiders all cloaked in bone and hide, dragging carts and shouting at each other. armed, loud, confident. Then the air changes. No owl screams, no human calls. Instead, shadows, hundreds of them. Darting, circling, dipping low, then rising again. One raider looks up, then another, then they all stop. The noise vanishes. Then with terrifying synchronicity, every owl drops low not to strike, but to stare. A wall of golden silver rust and gray eyes. Not blinking, not moving, just watching. You think you'd laugh if your mouth worked. One of the raiders yells something. Another throws a rock. The moment breaks. The owls respond not with claws but with sound. Clicks, rhythmic, rising. It hits the canyon walls and bounces, builds, multiplies. 1,000 clicks, then 10,000. Echoes morph into thunder. A sound like rainbow in judgment. The raiders panic. One drops his blade and bolts. Another tries to scream, but it's swallowed by the rising wall of sound. None of them make it through the pass. Some fall, some flee. One just drops to his knees and covers his ears until the sound fades and the owls leave him behind. Lynn watches without expression. "We don't kill," she says. "We show them they're already seen." You descend in stunned silence. The owls follow. Some land. Some vanish into their usual shadows. But one perches beside you. The same owl. Your owl. Maybe. You don't say anything. It clicks. Just once. And in that sound you hear everything. You are not loud. You are not blind. You are not prey. The village breathes again. It doesn't cheer, doesn't sing, doesn't raise banners or tell stories around the fire. Victory here feels different, like a held breath released slowly through the nose, not shouted from rooftops. The raiders are gone, chased not by weapons but by knowing. And the owls. They're back where they belong. On rooftops, in trees, inside the silence. You pass through the main path and feel it in the air. Calm, yes, but deeper than that. Not relief, not triumph. Trust. The kind of trust that comes from surviving together without saying a word. That evening, you sit under the watching tree, a gnarled old sentinel with branches like folded limbs. Dozens of owls are perched in the canopy facing outward. Only one faces in. You. When a stranger approaches, you don't hear footsteps. You feel them. A hush that isn't wind. The owl beside you lifts its wings, not in alarm but in alignment. Something is happening. A man appears wrapped in dust, carrying no pack, no weapon. His eyes are gray. His face is tired. But what draws your attention isn't his posture or his silence. It's the animal walking beside him. A dog. Old, lame in one leg, but proud and familiar. The man says nothing. He doesn't need to. Every owl in the tree turns toward him at once. The dog looks up, pauses, and then sits. Just sits. And the owls blink. Not all together, not slowly, but once each in sequence. A ripple of acknowledgement. You whisper, "Rock." The man hears you. Shakes his head. No. But she remembers him. He gestures to the dog. The dog lifts its chin but doesn't bark. You look around. No one is panicking. No one is tense. The elders have appeared at the edge of the courtyard. Watching. Waiting. The man steps forward and kneels. She followed feathers, he says. Through the swamps. Through frost. Through silence. He opens his hand. Inside an old spiral token. Bent. Tarnished. Wrapped in a single tail feather. She dreamed of a fire she couldn't find her way around. This was the only light that didn't burn. He places it on the ground. The owls shift. One drops to the earth and hops toward the token. It taps it once with its beak. Then flies, straight up. Then another and another, until the whole tree empties in a soft rush of wings and wind. The dog doesn't flinch, doesn't run, doesn't look up. And the man, he simply waits until the last feather falls. Then he turns to go. You stop him. Why now? He smiles, because someone blinked, and he's gone. You sit beside the dog. She watches you. You watch her. Neither of you speaks. From the trees comes a soft click, then another, then silence. Dawn comes slowly after that. You sit with the dog until the light turns blue, then gold. She doesn't sleep. She doesn't whimper. She simply stays head lifted, ears, soft eyes, flicking now and then toward the treetops where the owls have begun to return not in alarm but in quiet waves, like tide returning to shore. The villagers don't gather. They don't approach. They just make space. That's how you know something important is happening. The dog rises as if prompted by a breeze. No one speaks, not even the birds. She walks to the center of the village and sits beside the cradle of air, the mound of white stones where the oldest owls are buried. Her paws sink slightly into the moss. Her tail wraps around her feet. One owl swoops low and lands beside her, then another, until there are 12. You don't understand the ritual, but you understand the weight. 12 owls facing outward surrounding a dog who has not barked once, not demanded, not submitted, just existed. And that has somehow been enough. The elders approach now not with offerings or chants, but with cloth and water. They clean the token the man left, hang it beside the others in the flight hall, not low, not hidden, but high near the black feather. Beside it, they place a new disc, blank, unmarked, waiting. Because a new message has begun, but no one yet knows the shape of it. Later, as the sun climbs higher, children begin to play again. One offers the dog a carved stick. She sniffs it, ignores it, then lies down on the soft clay near the garden as if she's been there her whole life. Odd fact, some believe dogs see the world in scent the way we see in color. If that's true, then today must smell like forgiveness. You ask Sane if this changes anything. She watches the dog for a long time before saying, no, and yes, and maybe. The owl on her wrist clicks once, then lowers its head. The dog doesn't look up. You think of rock, of the carved collar, of the feather tokens carried across seasons and mountains and grief. You think of blinking eyes, both human and bird-catching movement in shadowed places. You think of barking once loud and loved, now replaced by the kind of silence that listens before it speaks. And you wonder if the future has room for both sounds. That night, under a sky unbroken by wind, you lie down without a lantern. The owl perches beside you. The dog curls nearby. Neither of them moves. You sleep better than you have in weeks. Because now the night holds more than watchers. It holds memory and mercy. In a village where owls replaced dogs as guardians, you arrived a stranger and left as something else, not a handler, not a convert, but a witness. Through 15 nights of observation, storms, secrets, and silence, you came to understand the depth of the bond shared between these people and their silent sentinels. Owls were not simply pets, they were partners, prophets, weather forecasters, and messengers of dreams and memory. But under the feathers lingered the shadow of fur. The memory of dogs once beloved, now only remembered in stone etchings and denied tombs. Stories whispered of Rock, the last dog, and the famine that split the village's heart. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was a decision. Owls taught stillness. Dogs asked for presence. And in the years since, no bark had pierced the night, until the day one returned. Not barking, not begging, but walking beside a stranger who offered no answers. Only proof. A token, a feather, a silence shared. A silence. In that moment, the village didn't reject or embrace it, simply listened. And the dog stayed, not because she was invited, but because no one asked her to leave. In the quiet that followed, something new took root. Not replacement, not reversal, but coexistence. A feather beside a paw. A blink beside a breath.